then too, this is an attack on the marks of the church. If someone, let's say in the church, is engaged in terribly heinous sins, let's say as bad as the outrage at Gibeah, and no one in the church knows, and that person comes to the Lord's Supper, there is no guilt attributed to the congregation. But if someone is in a sin, and the sin is left unchecked, we're talking now about a censurable sin, a serious sin, not something relatively small, and then that person is allowed to come to the Lord's Supper, then the church begins to lose its marks. It begins first of all to lose the third mark of the church, which is Christian discipline, because the person was allowed to come and he shouldn't have been allowed to come. It's a loss also of the second mark of the church to that degree too, because then the sacrament, the Lord's Supper, was profaned. It's a loss ultimately of the first mark of the church, because once people are allowed to come to the Lord's Supper, with the third and second marks of the church being lost, the pressure then goes from the person who's under discipline to the minister. He's preaching too sharply. We can't let him get away with that. We need to rein it in. And then the church becomes corrupted. This isn't some strange or unheard of thing. This is the history of the last 2,000 years. This is why there are false churches. This is why 90% of the people in Northern Ireland, for instance, to take the example I used earlier, think there's nothing wrong with just having the baby of so-and-so baptized in the local Church of Ireland or Presbyterian Church or Methodist Church or whatever, because God has taken away the candlestick. And it starts, does apostasy, with one instance of the failure of church discipline. And then this, because sin conceived then grows, bears fruit, and brings death. This then would mean the loss of the blessings of the sacraments and the preaching for everybody. For everybody. And so the calling for us is to take the sacraments seriously, to guard against them being corrupted, and more especially and positively to use them. Use them as laid down in the Scriptures and our confessions. Use them as a means of grace and as signs and seals of God's so great salvation. Amen.